This will be for the con exercise, features of a circle from its expanded equation. So before beginning this exercise, you need to be familiar with the circle equation in standard form. X minus h quantity squared plus y minus k quantity squared equals r squared. Okay, h comma k are the x and y coordinates of the center of the circle. X and y are any point, or the coordinates for any point on the circle, and r equals the radius. Okay, so you need the center and the radius to write this equation. All right, so we're going to use completing the square on this equation. So you might want to be familiar with completing the square first. But anyhow, we're going to find the center and the radius of the circle after we convert this equation to standard form. All right, so the first step you want to do is to get all the constant terms, the ones without variables, on one side of the equation. So these all have variables except for the -9. The opposite of -9 is +9. So we want to add 9 to both sides. 9 minus 9 cancels right here. All right, the next step is to group the x's and the y's together. Okay, so use parentheses, a plus sign, parentheses again, and that's going to equal 9. All right, so the x's will go right here. We want to write the exponents in decreasing order, largest exponents first. So we have x squared minus 4x, and you want to leave plus a blank space, which we'll get to in a minute. And do the same thing with the y's. Y squared is first, -12y, and do plus a blank space. And now what we're going to do is use the method called completing the square. So we're going to factor these into binomials that are a perfect square. So what you want to do, you look at the term with x and y. We'll do them one at a time. All right, you look at the coefficient. You can see that's -4. All right, so the first step is to take half of -4. That's going to be -2. And then the next step is to square it. Okay, -2 times -2 is +4. Now you do the same thing right here. You want to take half of -12, so that's going to be -6. And then you square it. -6 times -6 is 36. Now, let me just write this out. This is half, and this is squared. Now, you can't just randomly add numbers to one side of the equal sign and not the other side. So in order to balance this out, since we added 4 here, we want to add 4 to the other side as well. Since we added 36 here, we want to add 36 to the other side as well. All right. And now what you want to do is factor this right here, this trinomial. Now, it's actually very easy. We know that to factor this, you need two numbers that multiplied to +4 and add to -4. But really, you don't have to go through all that. You just use the number you got when you took half. So to make this into a binomial, you start with the x, and then it's just -2, and that whole thing is squared. So whatever number you got when you took half, that's what goes in the parentheses. Okay, and then we have the plus sign. Once again, use the number you got when you took half. So this is going to be y -6, and that gets squared. So the negative 6 just goes right here. So you can factor this if you like, but you don't need to, because it will always work out to the number you got when you took half. That's the idea of completing the square, so it's a perfect square on both terms. And then finally, 4 plus 36 is 40, plus 9 is 49. All right, so that is our final equation. Now, like I said, the formula in standard form, it's actually x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So I was hoping you would be familiar with this before beginning this assignment. But in order to find the center, notice we said the center in the beginning was h comma k. Now notice in the equation, it's negative h and negative k. So you simply have to change the plus minus sign on the number in parentheses. So for h, instead of negative 2, it's going to be positive 2. And instead of negative 6, it's going to be positive 6. So that right there is the center. And here we see r squared equals 49. The opposite of squaring something is to take the square root on both sides. So r equals 7. All right, I know negative 7 would satisfy this equation, but a radius can't be negative. So you just throw away the negative part of the solution and keep the positive. All right, so the radius is 7 and the center is 2 comma 6. All right, the center is 2 comma 6 and the radius is 7. All right, so once again, they give the equation in expanded form, and we're going to have to write it in standard form. Same questions as last time. All right, so once again, step 1 is to get the constant terms on the right hand, on either side by itself, but in most cases, it's going to be the right-hand side. These all have variables except for the positive 2, the opposite. The opposite of positive 2 is going to be negative 2. Okay, you want to do that to both sides. Cancels here. And of course, 0 minus 2 will be negative 2. We'll write that in a minute. Okay, once again, you want to group the x's together. And you want to group the y's together. And that's going to equal negative 2. Now, when you group the x's, put the largest exponents first. So x squared is first. Negative 6x is second. And the blank space is last. Same thing with the y's. Y squared is first. Negative 6y is second. And then the plus blank space is last. This will always be positive because the step in filling in this blank is to square the number that you had. So this will always be positive. All right, same as last time. You go with the coefficient on x. All right, so the first step is to take half. Half of negative 6 is negative 3. Take that negative 3 and you square it. Negative 3 times negative 3 is 9. If you add 9 here, you have to add 9 to the other side for it to balance out. Now let's do the y. Same exact thing. Go to the coefficient with y. It happens to be the same number in this case. It usually won't. All right, you take half, that's going to be negative 3. And then you square it. And negative 3 times negative 3 is 9. If you add 9 on this side of the equation, you have to add 9 on the other side as well. All right, and now we're factoring. We have to turn this trinomial into a binomial squared. Same with the y's. We're going to take this trinomial and turn it into a binomial squared. By the way, a trinomial just means it has 3 terms. Binomial has 2 terms. All right, so this one here is for the x's. And you don't even have to think about this, how to factor it. You just take the number you got when you took half, and that goes in the parentheses. So the -3 just goes right there. Okay, make sure you maintain the plus minus sign you had when you took half. And same thing here. This is for the x's. This one starts with a y. And we're just bringing down the -3. All right. Now, if you want to double check this, you can certainly unpack this and use FOIL or distribute, but you'll just get the same thing you had right here. All right, and finally on the right-hand side, 9 plus 9 is 18, minus 2 is 16. All right. So the center, remember you just changed the plus minus sign. So instead of -3, the x-coordinate for the center is +3. Right here, same thing. The y-coordinate for the center is +3. And this equals, like we said last time, this equals r squared. All right, so if r squared equals 16, you just take the square root of both sides, and r equals 4. Okay, -4 works, but not for the radius, because the radius has to be a positive length. So that's it. The center is 3, 3, and the radius is 4. All right, so in the parentheses, 3, 3, that's the h and k, and that's for the center. And we said the radius was 4.